a year ago, plus it's got about a 5% dividend yield. Today, that's a lot better than most. Krishna shared data about AI's growing adoption in the enterprise and the progress of IBM's quantum computing efforts. And he also fleshed out how he says the company's consulting and hybrid cloud efforts are going to lead to growth.
We are also investing in consulting so that we have a bench as we are entering this year because we see the demand. Now, by the way, if all of this remains in place, all of this will pay for itself. Because as the demand comes through, then all of these people are going to get fully deployed, and it'll show up in our top line and bottom line. And by the way, in the market where these skills are in high demand, that's not my worry of having them. The worry would be if we didn't have them.
Okay. So is there a way to scale people and protect margins? Is the combination of software plus people the way? What's your strategy there?
So 3 things. 1. I think that the cost of people in the end, about 6 to 12 months, works its way through the system. Because if there is people are getting more expensive, you are going to be able to price that in to your contracts. But it takes months, maybe a few quarters at the most to work its way through. Second, you got to get productivity. We just talked about AI a bit back, but more than that, automation, cyber, applying all of these enterprise software technologies helps you get more from the people, so you need fewer of them. And we didn't even talk about hybrid cloud, which, by the way, also multiplies the productivity of the people and the technologies.
Let's talk about hybrid cloud. You were a main architect of the Red Hat deal, which is all about hybrid cloud, and you've been migrating so much of IBM's business to working in that Red Hat environment. Is that at the point where you envisioned it being right now? Do you still have some more optimization to go to be executing on your hybrid strategy the way you want?
So first, on Red Hat, I'm actually ecstatic in where it is. We've been telling you that we'll do high teens, and we have done over 17% every quarter since inception. So I'd say that has more than fulfilled the promise and our expectation. It has become the foundation of IBM's hybrid cloud strategy. A lot of our enterprise software runs in turn on Red Hat. Red Hat is also widely embraced by all the other public clouds. So I'd say yes, it has actually instantiated exactly what we were hoping for. But then as I think about where our clients are, I think now almost every client, over 80%, believe in what we call hybrid cloud. We believe people are going to use multiple public clouds. We believe people are also going to use private cloud. And so that is what hybrid cloud is. So if that's the reality, it's great to be where the puck's going.
There were a lot of doubters and a lot of pushback when IBM first started talking about hybrid cloud, but the market has certainly come around to multi-cloud and hybrid. I don't understand yet how you get the biggest margin benefit out of that when customers want to be in some IBM, in some AWS, in some Azure, in some Google Cloud, in some Oracle, et cetera. How do you make sure that you get the biggest benefit out of that situation?
I think it's actually pretty straightforward, John. So first, people may do some applications and they write them natively to one cloud. In that case, they're going to be on that cloud, and that's going to happen to some fraction. There are others that they say, look, I really want to have a common pool of skills that straddles all of these clouds. May not be for every single application, but let's call it for maybe half the critical applications. If you want a common pool of skills, that means they're not going to learn each native cloud all the way down to the depth. So that layer that provides abstraction comes from the Red Hat technologies, both Red Hat Linux and Red Hat OpenShift. That gives you that commonality that goes across both public clouds and a private cloud. And so I think you'll agree, when there's a shortage of skilled labor, then that's attractive to a certain fraction of the enterprises and to what they would view as critical, that they want the resilience of being able to go across multiple clouds. That's where the advantage comes in. And those things can then run across that environment, and that's how we would then get the software established. I actually worry less about margin. I worry more about client delight and people consuming it to get business benefit. If they get that, margin is an outcome.
Now, we also discussed inflation, how it's affecting businesses, and how IBM is advising clients to counter it. A key element of the strategy, sustainability.
There's a few aspects to this inflation. You mentioned energy and food, but it's more than that. I think it goes across commodities and a few other areas. You have both demand inflation, which comes from the liquidity and the extra consumer demand that is there, but you also have supply side shocks that are going on. So if I look at this, what we're doing to help our customers deal with this is how do you get more efficiency on your supply chain? How do you get more efficiency in your operations? Can you reduce the movement of goods, which requires then less transportation to some extent? So all the techniques we have are going to optimize, because if we can get 3-4% more optimization, that will drop inflation quite a bit. Because if I think of just energy, the supply shock is about 5% to energy supplies. So if we can begin to do that. Now the issue becomes one that I'm not sure that we can solve all by ourselves, is that is not a statement that applies every single place. So my statement is one that will apply to the globe at large. But if you go into one country in Europe, it could be that there it's not going to get solved so quickly and so easily. And that's, I think, what the world is dealing with right now. But I believe that if we can do 5-6% in terms of reduction in total demand, if we can begin to work on sustainability, if we can begin to work on more circularity, those are maybe slightly longer answers, but those are probably more sustainable. That's a pun on the word sustainable for probably the next decade to come.
So it's an interesting situation, Dee, here, where some of the historical knocks on IBM in this economic moment might be turning into pluses, like, oh, look, they've got so many people. Well, they've got a skilled technology workforce at a time when others need people with technology skills. And, oh, hey, look, the stock is dead money. It hasn't moved in a year. Well, it hasn't moved down either, and they're paying a dividend. So the question still is, though, can they grow from here? Has Arvind fixed the company to a point where they get out of that trap they've been in for a while?
We should note they haven't really moved over a decade as well. Though, yes, I would agree, John, that this moment is different. That line I can't get over. He said, I worry less about margin. I worry more about client delight. That certainly sounds like a mature company with a capital return program versus, the kind of rhetoric we heard out of the Uber CEO over the weekend. But let me ask you this. The company expects revenue growth this year in the high mid-single digits. John, is that good for a cloud and AI company? Wouldn't we expect a higher rate of growth, or is this sort of as good as it gets and that's okay for Big Blue? Does it ramp up from here?
Well, I think you gotta wonder what the margins are on that growth. And as he was saying, can they raise prices in their consulting business at the same time? Now, they're in a mainframe cycle, so that's great for them, both revenue-wise and profit-wise, Carl. But if you get revenue growth and that leads to, an uptick in the stock versus what everybody else is doing, hey, that's not bad.
Yep. I always think of Morgan Stanley. Katie Huberty went to overweight on April 14th, and the stock is higher from the date of that call. Pretty interesting, as she called it a good place to hide. That was really good, John. It's almost half past the hour.